Today on the Three Gorillas podcast, we revisit the raid where the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms attempts to arrest David Koresh, the leader of the Branch Dividians. We're talking about the siege at Waco, also known as Operation Showtime. You have found the Three Gorillas podcast. Listener discretion is advised. And here we are back to, I guess this is episode 3, right? Part 2 of the Waco Massacre. Yeah. Part 1.
Big 3.
Yeah. Part 1. I think we had a good time. We discussed you guys getting called and actually heading out to Waco for the Branch Dividians siege that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms originated. And we kind of went over all that, but today we're gonna go over kind of some more in depth. And Joe, I know you have the like the 30-day or plus timeline, but also I think I'm kind of more interested in what you guys did with your timeline as far as just rolling up there and what all happened until you guys got relieved out of that. So this is going to be part 2 of this. And by the way, hi Mark, hi Joe.
Hello, Greg. Hey, Joe.
Hello, good? Greg.
All
good to see you, my brother. All good.
So, let's start this thing, man. Joe, I know you've done a lot of work on this thing, so I want, just kind of take the ball and run with it. You guys, we covered when you first got notified of this, in the very beginning, and, kind of take us from, I know it had to have been really chaotic, everybody in their own cars driving all the way up to Waco, because it's, from Austin is what, about 90 miles?
Easily.
Close to that. Easily. Oh yeah. He was easily.
And then the compound is way out in the middle of nowhere too. So that was part of the issue as well. It wasn't just getting to Waco, it was getting to the compound as well.
Well, plus wasn't it, you said it was raining cats and dogs, right?
Pouring rain.
It was horrific. Pretty horrific.
So what was that like? I know back then, even today when SWAT is called out, sometimes there's hit and miss communication on stuff. What was that like when you guys got called?
Well, I get the call initially. I received the call from the BATF. I think his last name is O'Leary. Or he was contacting, first it was Pick, and then Pick went ahead and picked up the phone and called me. And then he said, we got to roll. And of course I was like, roll where? This thunderstorm's going. I'm thinking we have something in Austin, and it's not. And he says, no, they're in Waco, and they got into some kind of storm over there. They need our help. He didn't really go into a lot of detail at that point. So we were just gathering all the troops. But get this, from the time I got the call to the time, because we were notified at 1500, we got there at 17:15, 2 hours and 15 minutes. And that's including me making the ball roll for everybody to gather and then haul up there. That's 2 hours and 15 minutes. So that's quite dramatic. We were driving up there. I've driven fast before, and that was, we were hitting it really, really hard trying to get there. And like everything else, when we got there, like I said before in the previous one, we went straight to the scene. There was no staging area. There was no reception. Hey, you're going there, give you some extra information. Like once they called us, they didn't say, hey, go to this location right here. There'll be the staging area. We'll brief you, and then we'll move into whatever else, we got going like we normally did. And at that point, it was not that way. And we get there. And once we arrive at the scene, shortly after, I remember as we're getting there, there's more people, more chaos, cars lined up everywhere. The first person that I met when we were gathering everybody up to move up was a Waco SWAT officer. I remember him like today. He looked at me like, "Hey, are you in charge? What's going on?" He didn't know anything. So I grab onto him and his people, and then we started, gathering our troops. I have a really cool picture I'm not going to show it now, but you can, I'll send it to you later, that you can see Travis County cars lined up, or several of them, and people opening their trunks and getting in the process of, deploying where we were going to go. And then as we start moving up, then there's this van. I always remember this van. And what I remember is me and Pick and a couple of the guys, we went up there because we're staging everybody, and the van was open on the backside, and this guy in there, I mean, yeah, that's it. That's it. I think I saw Mark on that. Mark, that was you over there.
Yeah.
You're back to us.
Yep.
That was you. And look, back then in the day, it looks like that guy right there by the door in front of it has some pork chops. He has the typical pork chops. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, those were all up there. And there was a van. Man, if I'm not mistaken, that looks like the van on the left side up there. Anyway, so as a matter of fact, it might be. We went up there, started talking to them or him, and he looked like completely in a state of, he was very, very, had like these several radios, and he's talking to, just here, there. Who was he talking to? I don't know. Initially, then I found out it was talking directly to DC, and they were trying to, I guess, triage this whole mess as it's unfolding. But as you can imagine, this thing happened at 10 in the morning. And, we didn't get there till 5. And then shortly after that, I remember another shootout takes place. And we were just getting our stuff together. It's kind of eerie that, you're sitting there, you get to see, next thing you know, shots start ringing off. And we can see the compound, right there within sight. I mean, it's just kind of like we're too close, way too close, and not at the same time, because you can see the big road going all over there. But that tower, and you showed the picture, that tower just, it had a command. If you want to set up a sniper post, and you want to set up a sniper post in the compound, that was the place to do it. Now, I don't know if you have a picture of the front of the compound. It had an overwhelming view of everything. Anybody up there with a sniper, a 50 caliber, there it is. That's the back side of it, but at the front side of it, it had like a tower, and you could see, I mean, they could pretty much pick you off at any time. I believe it's there on the right-hand side somewhere. You can't appreciate it there, but that little center right there that you see is the one that they had the tower. So we get there, we do that, and we start, getting our people. We start deploying, trying to get liaison. Hey guys, tell us what's going on. What do you need us to do? And nobody really seemed to know at that point. And then, we started making decisions to deploy our snipers and try to help to start containment. That was my main purpose at that point, or our team. We were going to go ahead and work with anybody else and try to set people up to contain some of this. And that was the number one objective for the SWAT commander at that time. It was Pickering. There were still people at the scene, like I said before, roaming around, that had been involved in the initial incident. And in incidents like that, you want to take those guys out if you can. Sometimes you just can't. I mean, it was evolving. Nobody knows what, so they had to stay. There were, again, numerous tactical units there. Again, we had no communication with each other, different radios. So there's no comms between the tactical units at all. So I can't talk to Round Rock. Round Rock can't talk to us. And it was just, we couldn't talk to the people in Waco. We couldn't talk to any other team for that matter, or even the BATF. We couldn't talk to them either. So, and then as I understand, Mark, there was 2 command posts or 3 at the time?
That's hard to say, because it was so discombobulated. It really was. It really is hard to say, because what was a command post at one minute then kind of broke down and moved to another location. So it's hard to, it was hard to tell if it was a command post moving or a brand new command post set up, because there was such limited resources there in that so-called inner perimeter. So there were, and again, the whole operation wasn't set up. There wasn't a contingency or alternate plan built in to establish a command post if things went bad. So everything was happening in the present. So they were trying to put together any plan or drop in any plan that they already had. So everything was getting put together in the present. So it was really very, very confusing.
And one of the notes that I made also in my debrief, again, like I told you, my debrief that nobody read. But in my debrief that I went and said, I sent it. It was sent up to, and I don't want to throw him under the bus, but it was sent up to the sheriff at the time. And maybe he did read it. Maybe he just didn't pass it on or whatever. To bring the point home, I wrote of there was lack of coordination. We arrived at 1715, and about 1800 hours, a shootout took place. Not more than I wrote 1,000 meters away from where we were at. So that was very disconcerting because we couldn't respond to that. We were like, somebody's shooting and we're sitting here. Good luck. We're still trying to, assess. And that was very disconcerting to me. The extent, of course, of the outer security, there were 2 roadblocks. Okay. And one of the north side, one of the south side of the compound. And they were considerable distance away. The different points where they were setting things up that it wasn't really coordinated with everybody. So, early on, again, we requested all kinds of stuff Pickering did, and none of that was taken into consideration, or they just didn't do it, or nobody knew how to do it. Who's in charge of talking? Who wants to set up maybe some lights, bring in some lights? The weather's getting bad. You're going to have to really think about, like when we were doing stuff out there in the city, we know we're going to be prolonged. They bring in Capital Metro buses for us. And then we were able to go ahead and get the team and heat them up. It was cold that day, rainy, nasty. I mean, it was nasty conditions. So if you deploy anybody, you're going to have to think about, you're going to have to replace them eventually because you're letting them stay out there and they're going to be in the weather and they're going to become ineffective at that point. So down the line, as we went on, to me, it was extremely important, again, that you have somebody that coordinates. That's another thing.
How many agencies do you estimate had responded by this time?
Well, just to give you a picture, for ours, the responding teams, it was like Round Rock, we responded, the APD responded. I saw DPS there. I don't know if they were responding as a team. But then I saw also Waco SWAT was there. And there was other teams there, but I don't know who they were. Mark, I just don't. It was such chaotic mess that I just didn't know who was who at the time.
I ran into nobody else but Waco. That's it. I mean, from where I was, I didn't see another police officer but a Waco police officer. That's it.
Yeah, wow. When I've seen situation, I mean, obviously not this bad, but you have multiple agencies responding someplace, and you get into that conundrum of, I need to get this set up so when they respond, they'll know where a staging area is, who to report into, who's tactical operations officer, who's incident command, and starts, where are the medics going to set up, where's EMS and fire. You're in the middle of that. I'm sure somebody just keyed up and said, we need help. Send the cavalry. I don't care.
That's exactly what happened. That's
exactly what happened.
And there was no one. I mean, there was none of that. There was no staging area. People were just parking on side of the road. And if you read incident debriefs like Sandy Hook, there was 2 Las Vegas Metropolitan Police officers that were murdered in a CC's Pizza. And years ago, not that many years ago, like 2010 or so. And I try to get my hands on every debrief that I can, to gain what they did well, diminish what they did not so well in anything that I was involved in. And one of the things, if you read any one of them in any critical incident where there's any debrief, you'll always see one of the top problems, if not the top problem, is the fact that a staging area isn't set up. And and even if it is set up, it's not in a viable location. So it still clogs up the whole mess. So any ingress and egress out of that critical incident, more specifically for ambulances, there is always a mess. And in this particular case, what I theorize is that any other SWAT teams or tactical teams that were arriving after, because I think the order was Waco, then us. And any teams that arrived after that, basically they just drove up near the location and then just established their own staging area and just stayed there for whatever period of time, and then got the permission to leave, basically, because everything was stabilized. So there was some level of control. There was some level of a perimeter setup, and everything that needed to be evacuated was evacuated. So basically, if these other teams were arriving, like Round Rock or whoever, to include APD, because I never saw an APD officer either, not one, only Waco. And, I was in position and stayed in position for about 12 or 13 hours there in that inner perimeter area that was adjacent to what would be the B side of the compound. So I just theorized that everybody, because they couldn't get up to anywhere, there was no established point of like a rallying point. So they just eventually just left. Basically, they got permission to leave because all the federal resources were arriving about 3 o'clock in the morning or so, 4 o'clock in the morning. So, and then they were steadily coming in the whole next morning. So.
And I remember that whole morning, and jumping to that, we saw the big Greyhound buses with federal agents. I mean,
they were
Greyhound buses full of federal agents.
Yeah, they were rolling.
And they got there and said, "Hey, thank you very much for being here. We got this, and we just your services are not longer needed."
We stayed the night.
We stayed all night long until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. We didn't leave there till about 6 or 7. We gathered all our stuff, and then we went. And then we had been up for 24, and then we went over there and tried to drink some coffee somewhere. But you know what? There was one other thing that came up too during this whole thing, and it's on my notes here because I got quite extensive debrief here that I just went through everything I could possibly think of. And one of the things they had here, and I made a note of, that there were 2 separate negotiations going on at the time when we got there. So you had 2 different people talking to the people over there, which that just really adds a little more to the confusion. Again, I'm not trying to go ahead and drop any of the grease, but again, already a chaotic situation, as we already know. Nobody needs to beat that dead horse. We already realized that. Now, there were 2 points that I made in this report that I wrote, was that to me, okay, the lesson learned from me, okay, because people keep on making the same mistakes when they do these tactical operations. I can go all the way back now to Arkansas, where they went ahead and did that raid on the airport manager. I believe it was ATF, looking for guns or whatever. And again, you look at that, and I've read a lot about that. Again, it's still litigation and everything else, but the one thing that I read is that this guy went to work every day.
Right.
I mean, he had 5 guns as best I could recall, or I read, and I'm just going like, again, you have to learn from some of this stuff to pick, when and where you're going to do what, and then, measure, the measure of, what you're going to do. But,
Joe, you say, as far as learning, as far as that goes, that's something that I've noticed, and I'm sure you guys have noticed as well. I have the perspective of 32 years of law enforcement over a 38-year period. And I watch this cycle of, we learn from our mistakes, and then all the old guys leave, they forget, and here's the new guys again doing the same mistakes again because they're not listening to the old guys when they warn them about stuff. And that's
a great point. Great point, Greg, because Mark, again, will tell you here in a minute, he has slowed people down. I remember a case they told, I'm not going to say the case or anything, but you slowed something down that involved the feds. You slowed your tactical sergeant down. You reeled them in because they were fixing to go ahead and step into something that they probably didn't really think it through. Correct, Mark? I mean, I know you have a time to time.
That's the checks and balance component, and that's what eludes a lot of other teams or a lot of other agencies. Is it, and one of the things is it, when you have these specialized units, and we'll talk just simply with SWAT, is that you have this kind of ingrained, established leadership among the team itself. And so they try out for the team. They're the tactical operators. They're the trained tacticians. They're the folks that do the job. And then what happens is it a lot of agencies will bring in a sergeant who's never a SWAT team member, or they'll bring in a lieutenant and a sergeant who were never SWAT team members. So what happens is that you have this very strong kind of alpha presence within that team that runs the team itself. So what they do is they push around that sergeant and lieutenant, and because they want to fit into that group, they allow themselves to be pushed around. And sure enough, it's the proverbial, give them an inch and they take a yard, and then you give them a yard and they take 3 yards. So consequently, when you have a checks and balance, it's really important that you use it, because what happens in those cases where you have that team leadership is that they start bypassing the lieutenant, or they're bypassing even the sergeant and lieutenant, because they've been empowered to this nth degree in everything. And then all of a sudden they're empowering themselves to sign off on operations plans, where policy or standard operating procedure mandates that policy goes through the sergeant, lieutenant, and captain. So that's the checks and balance within there. So the one thing is that, you have to empower your troops. It's really important, because someday they'll take over those leadership positions. But by the same token, you got to keep somewhat of a tight rein on them as well. You have to find that happy balance, because if you let them roll, I'm telling you, man, it's like a weed. It's insidious. They'll take over everything.
Oh,
and then consequently, that's what happens in these cases, because anybody can have a bad day. Anybody can not be thinking. Anybody can be in a situation that's happening real fast. You get caught up in the whole momentum of things, and that's where the checks and balance comes into play. Going to the lieutenant and then going to the captain. Never ever. And then you empower, even the lieutenant empowers the captain and says, hey, don't ever rubber stamp anything I give you. Make sure you meticulously look over. And then the same thing with the sergeant. It's like, hey, I have 100% trust in you. But just like Ronald Reagan says, you trust, but you verify. And you don't put blind trust in anyone, particularly in that business where people's lives are hanging in the balance.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, that really, this is a theory, okay? Only a theory. So please don't kill the messenger here, okay? Now remember, we were involved, and as I mentioned in the first show or the second show, Operation Caballo Negro. Okay, Operation Caballo Negro had well over 400 officers, BATF, SMT, DPS, SWAT, Round Rock, Austin PD, so forth and so on, over 400 officers. Now understand, we did that operation with them. Okay, and that was pre-planned. Everything went like clockwork. We did what we had to do. Now, this operation, maybe perhaps they decided, hey, we're going to do our own thing. We don't really need to consult because we got this down. And they ran with it. They were there on station, as we have been established, a couple of weeks already, because they had to bring everybody in, which that gave the cart away, because, loose lips sink ships.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously. Well, and I made a note of that, intelligence available to BATF and tactical approach and planning. Those two things right there. It was just, it just lacked. It just wasn't there. And then by the time we got there, we're Johnny come lately. We're, like Mark says, last minute Larry. And we were last minute Larry there, because it was just like, dude, now you have to sit here and pick this, mess up as best you can, dealing with all these variables, including the shootout. What was going to prevent these people? We heard it, from picking us off as we went along. That was my worry when we went to that farmhouse, or that barn that was right across from it. We were holding cover behind it. We found cover, not concealment. We found cover because, again, we feared, hey, at any moment, all of a sudden they decide to take you off, Mark. They're going to pick you off, and who knows? Because we had no idea what the intelligence was there, what their move was. Are they going to break out? Plus, if you look at the size of the compound, at any moment in those first 12 hours, from the time that it started at 10 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, they could have walked out the back.
Yeah, easily.
Literally, they could have walked out
Yeah.
the back and never be seen again. That's
Well, you just
the
look at that.
reality of life.
You look at that whole compound, as large as it is, how many people you would
Oh.
need to secure it,
Oh.
and the fields of fire out there. All you'd need is a couple
Oh.
of good snipers, and
And it-
anything the
wa-
cops tried to do, they would just take them out. So
And Mark, what do we face normally on a normal day-to-day SWAT day that we face? A building that pretty much is square. You have A, B, C, and D. That's it. That thing had two alphabets and the Chinese alphabet all the way around it
Yeah.
because it was just so many corners and windows. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at the and then you look at what they were made of. That wasn't a brick home. That was like plywood in a
Like a
homeless
fort.
camp
It was like a
all the
fort.
way around. Yeah. Yeah, it was ridiculous. And then they had these pits. You could see them from the air. There was a pit in there too. And then they had the tunneling. That was something else too, tunneling. I mean, you would have to get, a tunnel rat from Vietnam to go in there and, oh yeah, look at that. And it was like that. It was under construction. So you still had that other side right there that they were going to add on, and look at that bottom right there. I mean, that's like Saving Private Ryan when they hit the beach and they're starting to shoot everybody up on top. I mean, it is crazy. That is some crazy stuff.
yeah. Now that
But
tower
anyway.
you were talking about, you can see that tower right dead
There it
center.
is. There it is. And we were facing that. We were facing that tower. That's what we
Yeah.
were looking at. And it could pick us off 2 miles away.
Anybody with a decent bolt action rifle and a decent scope, some glass on that thing, and
Yeah, well, that'll be another conversation because me and Mark were in Dallas and we went there too. Well, we weren't there on the day that it happened. We're not that old, but yeah, we were looking at the Dallas deal too. We've gone over there and looked at that. That thing is crazy to talk about too. The main suspect. Let's talk about Koresh or David Howell. He appeared like, I mean, of course, at the beginning, we're starting to listen to him because he was talking. We could hear him talking. He was talking through was it a PA system that he was talking, Mark? He was talking and kept on talking.
Yeah,
all night long.
I didn't know if it was some type of bullhorn or if it was a PA
It
system.
was.
No.
I think it was a PA system, and he was steadily flapping his gums. And it was just like, we're being tortured here. But anyways, I mean, he obviously the man was, not well in the head. Of course, they had the watchtower. Again, if you look at that compound, the numerous turns, the compound, again, one main road, it wasn't even paved. It appears to be, at least, 28 windows facing us. I counted them, 28 windows. Those are the ones facing us alone. So, again,
Mark, as many threat assessments as we did for narcotics and fugitive warrants and that sort of stuff, this would have been a no-go. This would have been right off the bat. We're not doing it.
No,
we're not going up there.
Never.
No. As a matter of fact, it was funny because it was pretty soon after Sheriff Frazier was elected. We had a target in Del Valley that it wasn't a narcotics target. It was kind of a host of other, and I'll use my air quotes, like an organized crime target. And it was very much like a little mini Dividian compound. It was like add-on on top of add-on on top of add-on, kind of going back north and then coming back south and then going east and west. And then, a T add-on in the middle of this property. So it was very, very reminiscent of that. And I remember Sheriff Frazier coming in the SWAT office with and I was a sergeant over the SWAT team at the time, coming in and going, "Hey, I don't know how I got involved in this, but can you look this over because APD is going to want a search warrant on this, and we're working in concert with them on this deal." And man, I looked at that aerial shot and said, "We're not doing it. We're not doing this. We are not."
And that's so important to know your capabilities and know when something is a really bad idea.
Yeah.
Well, talking about capabilities, I have notes here too that says that they had information, okay, that there were armed patrols days before this, armed patrols, guards that patrol the compound on a daily basis. Let's just talk about that for just a second, okay? And then I go down and we start looking at weapons and logistics. They did have a water supply. They had a large food supply. They also had a 50 caliber. They had explosives, AK-47 assault rifles, ARs, and M16 fully automatic weapons.
So
That
according to
in itself,
ATF that day, when the ATF agents were briefing us, they were debriefing and briefing us. But before, because I was coming in and out of my perimeter position, getting called in to meet with them, and then all of a sudden they weren't ready to brief us, so I'd head back out and come back in. And the ATF, when they finally did, the 2 ATF agents that were on the raid, they were there, they were covered in blood from dragging their counterparts, their comrades out of that inner perimeter. They were telling us that, hey, there is 7.62 out the wazoo in that house, and there are 50 cals. Both we have been in the service. We know what a 50 cal sounds like.
Sounds like, yep.
Cals in there. So it's like there was numerous reports of 50 cal fire on those ATF agents. So, it was a very, very precarious situation.
And to that point, knowing that, if you see the pictures, most of them that were behind cars had one in their hand, a pistol.
Yeah.
They had pistols in there. I'm going like, you're going up again. I mean, the guys on the roof that came to the roof, they were trying to do the thing. They had ARs or whatever they had on them. But, you look at the other part of it, you go like,
yeah.
And I'm going like MP5. Yeah, that's a handgun with a, with a scope on it. And I'm just going like, also, the other part too is that according to the information that I got also is that they had a history of the Dividian compounds. They were training their people. They would train them in the use of firearms. That information came out too, which is crazy. You're looking at that. So now you have all these things that was known. Like Mark always says, what did the officer know before the incident? Very key. And you start looking at all the thing, and then just the math doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up. It does not add up in any form or fashion. I know you probably wouldn't do that too. Now, one of the things that we start looking at Koresh, who he was, he had been already tried once before. He avoided that. They dismissed it, whatever. And it was a shooting situation that they got involved with, but he didn't go down for that. And he swore after that, you're never going to get me. It ain't happening. No form, no fashion. I'm just not doing it. Not doing it. Now, the compound, according to my sources here, had been under surveillance for 8 months. 8 months. It's in the report. 8 months. And I'm going like, whoa, because I didn't know that part of it. If you had it under surveillance, I mean, again, Mark, I'm astonished. I really is. It's astonishing, when I got there. And then they turn around, and if you look at the other reports, which is a really, really telling story, I have an article here that says raid against cult. And this is like 2 weeks after, says was full of mistakes. ATF top officials maintain phone tip led to the ambush. And we know that was not true at all. But there it is. They were still at that point, in denial of sorts, because the evidence was going to come out sooner or later that, again, I don't think you did your due diligence. What do you think?
No, I mean, it was already a raid that should have occurred. And then when they knew definitively that they were coming, the whole raid, I don't know if you guys got a chance to look at that congressional hearing link.
I did again. This is like the third time I've looked at it. I learned something new. That was incredible. But nobody burned, Mark.
Yeah. Well, the 2 guys that got fired, they got rehired. So the
dog wasn't in, right?
So the whole thing is that the operation security was the key to the whole operation. That was the key. Getting down there in the horse trailers, or the cattle trailers, getting down in the livestock trailers, I guess I should say. And that was the whole key to the operation. And when you're the person that's going to tell you go or no go, that person says no go, that's the end of the operation, man. That's the end of the operation. It's just like, how many times have we had anything set up, be it scenario training, be it some type of live fire exercise, and when you brief that scenario training or you brief that live fire exercise, you say, everybody is a safety officer. Everyone here is a safety officer. Anyone sees any unsafe job procedure or any unsafe situation, you call end scenario or ceasefire, whatever the command would be. And there is no question. There is no question. Everyone has the authority to end that operation. Everyone does.
Yeah, and I know we developed over time. We would pull a code word that no one would ever say in that scenario, in that situation. We would pull a code word. I remember we used to use landslide a lot. Landslide, code red, whatever. And if somebody said landslide, we're out. Everybody would just turn tail and go back out to an assembly area.
It's over.
Period. Yeah, it's done.
It's over.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
I'm wondering whether these guys, they've been working on it so long. Like you said, Mark, earlier, there is a level of confidence. You can call it a level of arrogance, a level of assertiveness that goes with special ops people that maybe at one point they just can't even imagine. We're going to come in there with overwhelming force, and these people are going to see that there's no way out, and they're going to put down their guns and they're going to give up. Do not count on that. But I've heard cops say it before. We got to come in there with overwhelming force, and we're going to intimidate them, and we're going to do this, and that way no shots are fired. Well, I'm not going to rely on that.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with a doomsday cult. Yeah.
But the other thing too, if you look at it, remember we always talk terrain. Let's talk terrain for a second, okay? Mark, you have a place that you got your little getaway that you bought. How many acres is that?
25.
This place is 77 acres. 77 acres. And Mark, I got lost in your place, by the way. 77 acres. That's 77 acres all the way around. I mean, that's the area of this compound that, as you see in the background, they were building on more.
Oh, yeah.
So it's huge. It's a monstrosity. Now, I would have loved to seen, okay, they said they had a plan. I would have loved to seen, okay, team 1, what is your job? Team 2, I mean, you're obviously going to go, you want to go get something. And I've never been able to get my hands on what it was that each one, because the guys that went on the roof got their, handed to them. When they hit that roof, you can see those bullets flying right through that wall. And that guy is hightailing it down that ladder as quickly as he possibly can, because he was not going to make it in there. Just was not going to make it in there. And another thing, in an interview, this is, I quote, what they said. These are the people within the compound. This is the mindset. And then you have to look at mindset too. It says right here, a former member said, the Dividians they were thought of as God's Marines. If you can't die for God, you can't live for God. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, bro. You're talking about, Semper Fidelis, or, the hoorah, or Rangers lead the way. I mean, these guys, they had a fanatical guy. They had the means. They have all this training that they're constantly doing. They already knew they were coming, because everybody was probably flapping their gums in town. That's conjecture on my part. But again, people run their mouth all the time. What are you guys doing here? What is this overwhelming force of ATF agents coming? I mean, no, that doesn't work. There's no surprise there. None whatsoever. When I saw that, what again?
No OPSEC, no Operation Security at all.
And the Tribute Herald, back on 2/26 of 93, February 28th, 1993, on 2/26, 2 days, said that Howell sees himself as the Christ or the Lamb of God. So once again, you think about French Guiana, right? And Reverend Jones that took all his 800 people with him with the Kool-Aid. That's where the Kool-Aid thing came. Not to make a joke of it, that was horrible. That was a horrific scene, but the same thing. I mean, you're looking at kind of the same thing right here. And unfortunately, as law enforcement, they played into that, which is sad because it costs lives and it injures a lot of people. And, it costs a lot. And, we could have been part of that too, as far as like getting, roasted out there too. Gladly, safely, we did not. And I thank God for that. But, it could have gone the other way.
Sure could have.
It could have gone the other way. And again, the typical cult, they isolate. Koresh did that. So all of these signs that they knew about coming into the preparation of, again, taking this whole thing down, it was not there. They were building a defensive compound. Again, I read another article that they were building. You see all that stuff right there? That's all defensive compound stuff that they were building. You see on the left right there? See how that goes down to that labyrinth and everything else? Supposedly they were building the defensive compounds. And if you look at it, there's a line right there, even in the front, where they were building up some of that stuff. And look at all the trash vehicles, RVs, and all this other stuff, obstacles in between from you to the door. I mean, those are things that you have to think about too. And who was covering the back? They all came to the front. Did you see anybody in the back?
There was.
Anybody?
There was. Part of their plan, they had people posted on the perimeter. I think they had like 2 or 3 agents back there, but they did have.
Oh,
people.
2 or 3? A whole 2 or 3?
Yeah.
They were.
I mean,
I'm assuming
better than nothing.
That was just like as an Overwatch kind of thing. If somebody does run out the back, at least they can
That's exactly
track
what it was.
until they get out of the perimeter.
Yep, that's exactly what it was.
I mean, well, anyways, again, they were trained. The subjects within the compound, they had been indoctrinated. We already talked about all that. As I'm going down this list of stuff that I'm learning as I was putting this whole thing together, large amount of women and children, and then again, we go back to our threat assessment, Mark, and we know you have that. It throws a different ball game into everything that you're doing because you're cranking rounds. You don't know who you're hitting.
It's over with.
You just don't. I mean, it's the party's over.
And again, I can't tell you how many soft shoe warrants we did by doing a takedown, feigning like there was a car breakdown, rusing them out of the house because there was 2 children in a house or even one child in a house. That changes the whole dynamic in the situation.
And was one of the deploying flashbangs and stuff like that. You have we've had cases. Oh, there's a person inside that house that's in a wheelchair. I mean, it's over. You're not going to do it. It's party's over. You don't want to do that. They're immobile. You catch something on fire, party's over again. You can't do that stuff like that. But go ahead.
And that's the thing that really kind of struck me on this deal is as I looked at it, I was like, what were they thinking? What, with all the kids, with all the innocent people, and what I mean by innocent, they're still supporting him, but they're there for a reason. They're not there to be paramilitary or to be criminals, but they were attracted to this group of people as maybe support. It was a feeling of family and all of the stuff that goes on with a cult as far as the brainwashing and acceptance and indoctrination and all that. Whenever I see this, I'm like, I don't care how many people I have. It's a no-go.
Yeah. And that's can't control the people inside.
Yeah. And it's over. The party's over at that point. And then if you look at this again, and I have to bring this up because I have notes right here that said that they knew. Again, he went out, the agent, again, from the time he was inside till he left, and he went ahead and told the decision makers, this is a no-go, and they went with it was 40 minutes. 40 minutes to say no, and it could have ended right there. On top of that, they wanted they kept on saying that to us. We lost the element of surprise. We lost the element of surprise. We lost the element of surprise. And this is the question that I had. This raid was conducted during the daylight hours. Daylight hours. What surprise, if it takes you a quarter of a mile to get to the front door, are you bringing to the table? Everybody's awake. Everybody's awake. And that, good.
The justification in that was the fact that because it was this time, it was on a Sunday, that there would be the groups would be separated. So the children and women would be in one location, the men would be in another location because of Sunday services, because of those things that went on on the Sunday. So that's what they were counting on. They were counting on that as being in place. But that went hand in hand with the operation security. So consequently, once it's like the air flow chart. Once all roads lead to Rome and all roads lead to the operation security. And once that's broken down and they know you're coming, then of course anything that you would expect them to be at, if this was a surprise on a Sunday morning, is not going to be the case. So all roads lead to operation security. And once that's breached, it's over with. I mean, it's completely over with. And they were fully aware that he knew they were coming. The person that was going to tell them that was telling them that. So there's absolutely no procedure in place that would afford anyone the opportunity in that position of leadership to continue with that rate. There's no precedent and there's no procedure that they can fall back on to say, hey, this is why we went, because we believe, based upon the history of this or this precedent or this procedure, allowed us to move forward. There's nothing.
Do you know that this is a rhetorical question? The assault team. How many officers were in the assault team? I'll answer
I have
that.
no idea. It was
42.
in the 70s. Okay.
42.
So 70 total, 70s, right around there.
But I'm talking about 42. According to this, 42 were assigned to the assault. The other ones were perimeter, this, that, and the other. But 42 to enter that compound and do the thing. Let's say, for the sake of argument here amongst us, that they do breach the top. Let's say the 2 guys or 3 guys on top breached and went in there. I'm gonna just play with it for me for just a second. They breach, they go in. Now they're going to be met with God's Marines, okay? And now, what could have possibly happened? Well, now they become hostages, or worse. You know what I mean? So now you're aggressing in there. Now you have to start going into this labyrinth to clear. You don't have enough elements to clear.
No.
You have to overwhelm it. You have to take it. You can't give it back. So you take that as you go. You don't have enough people to do that. So again, I'm just going like, these 3 or 4 guys that go to the roof. Again, it was just like crazy to me when I saw that. I went like, God, I mean, you guys are just so lucky that you didn't die on that roof. It's just,
and
crazy.
That's one of the things that a lot of people don't think of. Also, is they think they don't think through, and they think that, well, I can't see you, I can't shoot you. Well, it looked like a tin roof to me. And I don't know how reinforced any of this was, but those bullets are going to be zipping through.
You saw the
picture.
Yeah,
you see them in the video coming through.
You look at the this picture here, that center top window, all those dark black dots there, I'm assuming are bullet holes.
Yeah, they are.
Well,
it looks like one of the TCSO targets there, huh? When you're shooting
low and to the left. Is that what you're saying?
low and to the left.
Yeah, and that's stress response, yanking the trigger, and you're pulling low and to the left instead of. I mean, that's a big target up there. That window, right? Especially if
the window doesn't look like it was hit.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I'm looking at the window. It doesn't even look like one round went in there.
And some of it's suppressive fire as well.
I know. Yeah, I get it. I'm not. How about this? How about a question that I got you? And I know, Greg, you're a biggie on this one, and Mark, so are you. Medical personnel.
Oh, yeah.
Everything that I read, I didn't have any medics on the scene.
Wow.
I could be wrong, but I was looking at that. I'm going like,
there wasn't.
I remember one of the first narcotics hits I went on. We did the op order, and everybody's in the room, and they get through with the op order, and like, all right, so get your stuff, and we're gonna head out to I was like, whoa. Who's assigned, officer rescue? Who's officer down, who's react team, who's the medic, who's
where you're going to take
on?
them, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
And, the answer was, we'll call an ambulance. I'm like, no, and Mark, you were not at this one. I can assure you.
Thank God.
It was it was a small deal. It wasn't a big deal. It was a guy selling coke. He had a house with a fence and a big dog in the front, and that was it. But they were just like, yeah, well, let's just go knock this out. And it's like, wow, no,
that's what happens. Those are the ones that really turn south on you. Those are the ones that you're going to pay the price on. That one. You're going to pay the price on that one.
Yep.
You know what? Another thing too, if you think about it, again, another thing that was pointed out was during the firefight, there was absolutely no fire discipline whatsoever. That was just like, spray and pray. Spray and pray, because you got bullets flying your way. I'm just going to go and turn around and start cranking rounds. And I don't know what I'm cranking rounds to. It's a good thing. It's a good thing that they weren't here in Travis County, right, Mark? Spraying and praying like that into a house.
And then you could tell by even looking at those windows that the person shooting at them was on as you're facing was on the left side of that window, because that's where they're putting all those rounds over there. Mostly suppressive fire, just to put them down, to get their head down, to get their barrel back into that window,
into that fight. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, again, when it comes down to taking cover, these guys are, and if you look at those videos, you see, a lot of videos that show them back behind the trucks and everything else that the only cover that was afforded to them to beat down that fire coming out of that compound at them. It was terrible.
When they were talking to you about, it's a whole ton of 7.62. That 7.62 is going to burn right through all of those vehicles.
Oh yeah.
And standing on the other side is not going to help you one bit. So when you're looking at this big flat area with all these, just wide field of fire, what do you do?
I went ahead and did an assessment. If I would have had to take it, I had no other choice. We were going for whatever stupid reason, because I wouldn't do it. But you would have had to have between 120 and 150 officers, just for starters, to be able to go ahead and cover that. You would have had to, and I get this from Mark. I learned from Mark on this one. We have areas of responsibility. You had 6 major areas of responsibility that you would have had to divide that compound in. Some of them you can see them from the air. I would have divided that compound into areas of responsibility, and that's how you hit it simultaneously if you were going to even do it. I wouldn't have done it because I had kids, all the other stuff. But if you do, that's how you were going to have to do it. And those teams would have had to been rehearsed. You would have had to do all kinds of crazy stuff. Again, this would have been tantamount to what I can think of, like when I was in Ranger School. At the very end, you have the assault on Santa Rosa Island. Okay, that is a company-size, full-blown attack, assault that you do, and you have an operations order, and I have elements like from 2 companies hitting that thing. I mean, and everything is down to the wire, and you have bukus of people, bukus of everything to be able to come. Of course, that's military, so you can fire at will. Those are the bad guys. It doesn't matter. Here is not the case. But you have the living quarters that you had to go and take out, the storage areas you have to take out, the watchtower that you have to take out. You have the chapel, the weapon storage, which they knew it was there, and also the gymnasium and storage. So all these areas have to be subdivided to you to even come close to doing this. And that just tells you right there, the plan was just, there was no thought process in it, in my opinion. I could be wrong.
Well, and let's say, like in your scenario there, let's say 4 ATF agents got an arrest warrant and just went and did a knock and talk up there. They already had contact with the Dividians. They already had lines of communication. Say, hey man, we're going to come up there and can you meet us at the front door? Let's talk a little bit. And you take 4 officers up there and you meet them up there, and you're nice and you're polite. And you have that conversation, but the gunfight starts, and you got to go get those 4 guys, those 4 officers. We can Monday morning quarterback this thing all day long as far as, perimeter and negotiation and everything, or do we do an officer rescue? If we have an officer down, are we going to go ahead and press an officer rescue up there? And if we decide to do that, we go and we do it, and whatever happens at that point. But when you don't have that time pressure, I'll wait another year to pick this guy up. No, all that equipment, all the illegal, the evidence that's in there, all that is secondary, man. That making that case is way secondary to getting people killed.
Yeah, and I mean, when it comes down to it, just because of the circumstances that are at play, you don't need, you have one of your ATF agents in there, that's repeatedly going in and out of there. That's how you would make your case. Whatever you're seeing illegally, you're recording it in whatever fashion, even if he's relaying a description of it. And then you try to build your case based upon that, and then, the law allows exigency, and exigency comes in, just another word for it is emergency. And basically you have an exigent entry, you have an exigent case built on exigency, simply because of the circumstances that wouldn't afford you, a reasonable officer in the same situation, the ability to build a case or to make a case in that manner. It's the same thing where you have a murder case with no body. I mean, if you would have told anyone in law enforcement in 1920 that there would be people convicted of murder with no body, they'd have laughed in your face.
Right.
That's the habeas corpus. That's the case that you're building your case upon. That's the thing you're building your case upon. But our law has evolved to say that, hey, you could build cases without having evidence based upon those type of emergency circumstances, or the totality of that particular case didn't lend for the police to be able to have evidence presented to use in trial against the defendant. So basically you're just using nothing but testimony as in place of direct evidence. So, they could have done that.
And in closing here, because we're all the way to the bottom line here, and I'm just going to go ahead and close with what the final thing that I came up with. And of course, the Waco raid, again, was not just another search warrant. We've established that. It was a major operation that required a great amount of resources, again, that were needed, and you should have used those. My final opinion on that was, once they were detected, as you have already seen, they were tipped off. It should have been called off. It would be interesting to be able to view a BATF operations order, which I have not viewed one as of yet, and it's been a while. Again, how much time do they spend doing any kind of rehearsal? Anybody walking through this? Because we always did. We always would put ropes down, tape, whatever, and kind of weave. And this is what we're going to do. So I'd be curious if all these things were there. So, and how many raids of this magnitude had they conducted prior to this? You could say Caballo Negro, but then again, there were other agencies involved, and everybody had input on, and everybody had a rehearsal plan and everything that we did, which they didn't have here. And it cost lives.
It did. Well, guys,
it's not the same thing. I mean, you have to you have to look at the compartmentalization that you had in Caballo Negro or any other specific case. And that target was one continuous configuration with children, with women, and with people who are heavily armed and established a doomsday cult. So it's a situation that hopefully will never be replicated.
Hope so. Hope you're right.
Well, I appreciate you guys sharing your opinions on it, because like I said, I was not there, and I had to be able to talk to you guys about it and kind of review it in an open mind, knowing that officers died, and you should not allow officers to die without a good review and learning something from what happened. And I think there was a ton learned from this very serious, deadly situation, and I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that we or ATF never runs into anything like that again.
Not at that scale, but yeah, final thought is that hopefully they don't. But then again, if you have the Arkansas, that we can look at that sometime, they did it again to a certain extent, not in this this way, but it was something that they could have caught the guy away from there. So we can discuss that some other time, which is a shame.
Joe, Mark, thank you. Joe, thank you for taking us through this thing. And our next show is going to be, it's going to be about the Servant Girl Annihilator, or the Austin Axe Murderer, or the Austin Axe Man, or the Midnight Assassin, or there's a whole bunch of things. So we're going to cover the first, for sure, serial killer in Texas, 1883 to 1885, 86. Did
they have DNA back then?
There's some DNA somewhere. So I will see you guys on the next show. That will be episode 4. I look forward to it.
Same here.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mark,
Greg.
stay safe, my brother. Greg, like always, you the man.
We're out. Three Gorillas Podcast is a zombie advocacy production.